Hello, I'm Pierre Vickery. I'm President of the National Union of Journalists, and I'd like to welcome you to our Members of Honour award ceremony. It's the union's highest accolade, and our 2023 winners are recognised for taking a strong and principled stand in protecting their sources, for their activism on NUJ bodies, and as renowned specialists in their individual fields of journalism. Chris Mullin is a former British government minister, a political diarist of the Blair years, and an author. His novel, A Very British Coup, was adapted for television to great acclaim. He worked for the Daily Mirror and reported from wars in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. It was at Grenada's World in Action programme that his journalism secured the release of the Birmingham Six, described as one of the greatest feats ever achieved by an investigative reporter. Last year, the NUJ was proud to represent him in a successful legal case at the Old Bailey in London, seeing off an attempt by West Midlands police to force him to reveal his source. Let's hear now what colleagues and supporters of his journalism have to say about him.
Very difficult to compartmentalize a journalist, yes, brilliant, a writer of brilliance, a politician of curious abilities to use his own persona to such advantage. And what luck the six men and their families had, and what luck I had to work alongside him. What a comrade.
5 years ago, West Midlands Police attempted to force him to share details of his sources for his Birmingham 6 investigation under the Terrorism Act, and Chris bravely refused, emphasising that protecting sources is fundamental to a free press in a democracy. Journalists like Chris taking a stand on behalf of their sources have been vital to protecting public interest journalism as we know and need it. In the end, he didn't have to hand over the identities of his sources, in a decision described by the NUJ as a hopeful beacon. The NUJ said the case had threatened press freedom and that the judge's ruling showed that he recognised the importance of protecting journalistic sources and how this affects every journalist's ability to report.
But more importantly for us, I think, on the Ethics Council, policing the code of conduct, it is how he's proved to be such an ethical journalist. Doing his investigations properly, making sure he gets good sources, making sure it's accurate, making sure it's truthful. But in this instance, particularly in protecting the sources, the story he exposed about the Birmingham bombing and the miscarriage of justice that led to it is probably the most important story of the 90s and indeed arguably of other times, and is a major investigation. And to do it, he had to promise confidentiality to his sources, an important element of our code of conduct, and therefore showed how important it is for journalists to be upholding the code. Of course, he then went on last year to face the courts because the police in West Birmingham insisted that he should reveal his sources to continue the investigation. And Chris quite honourably said, no, I promised those sources confidentiality. I promised I would protect them until the end, and I will do that. And he took a massive risk appearing before court. And it was good news that the court upheld it, but he didn't know that that was going to happen. And that was an intensely honourable position for him to be in.
Let's hear now from the new Member of Honour.
Very happy that the NUJ chooses to remember an old has-been like myself. And I'm very grateful to them. They gave me a lot of support in the recent court case. I've been an NUJ member for more than 50 years, but I haven't been, I was actively involved in the Labour Party for many years, and that took up most of my time. I was elected to Parliament in 1987 and was there for 23 years. But lately, when the West Midlands Police took out an action against me to try and get me to, under the Terrorism Act, to try and get me to disclose my sources, the NUJ very generously backed me and paid my costs in that case. And I'm glad to say we won.
Dr. John Lister is a senior lecturer at Coventry University. He's also an author and co-founder of Keep Our NHS Public. He's best known in NUJ circles for his many years on the Standing Orders Committee, which steers the business through the union's policy-making body, the delegate meeting. He's the one on the stage, giving advice to the president and others when things get tricky during conference. As a health journalist, he's been an activist and an agitator in support of the health service, and he wrote the hugely respected The NHS After 60 for Patients or Profits. Let's hear now what his colleagues and friends have to say.
I could hardly fail to notice the Brian May look-alike with his huge curly mop that circled his head like a halo. You were an intelligent, persuasive speaker at the rostrum too. You fitted all the requirements of an SOC member, as well as being memorable to look at. You had to have patience and presence, good humour, and the ability to work long hours to be true to SOC's mantra. That is to try and ensure full and fair debate within the rules and not to show fear or favour to any one faction. Most of all, you needed a crossword puzzle mind to put order papers together. Well, you have all this in droves, my friend.
He never felt the need to berate people or shout to get his message across. His was close to a charm offensive. These are the facts, he would say. We need to get together to change things. And that is what he's done all his life. He's always been an active trade unionist and a committee communicator in his efforts to stop what began as a gradual reduction of the NHS as a public service free at the point of use, irrespective of means. Now it is much more a determined destruction by those who hand out PPE contracts to their mates and lovers. Throughout it all, he has shown a keen sense of humour.
He was an officer of our branch for around 25 years, starting in the early 1980s. That covered some pretty tough times. Wapping Thatcher's anti-union laws, Newspress grabbed their chance to de-recognise our strong Oxford Mail chapel, and we had that 3-year strike over union rights at Robert Maxwell's Pergamon Press. John provided a steady and cheerful hand at the helm during those difficult times. Though we're not one of the union's bigger branches, we've always had quite a high profile within the NUJ, and that's something I think John can take some credit for. He's a campaigner with a strong sense of social justice. He has a powerful intellect and he's highly articulate. He's been known to convince die-hard Tories to mount the barricades in defence of the NHS.
Let's hear now from John himself.
I've been a member of Standing Orders Committee running the conference for 24 years, I think it is now. And the highlight of that was in 2021 when we managed to pull off the successful online conference, which of course required a completely different series of steps to actually get it together. And the fact that it went according to plan, completed the agenda and nobody died, it was really good. So we're really very pleased with that. So I think that was probably about as high a point as we can get, actually. It's a very welcome acknowledgement of, I have put in some hard graft for the union, and I'm really delighted that the union's seen fit to say thank you in this way, and it's really nice.
Chris Wheel is an award-winning freelance journalist and chair of the trustees of NUJ Extra, the union's welfare charity. Spurred by his experience following a car accident, he was determined to raise funds to help journalists in need of help, and he can take personal credit for the charity we know today. NUJ Extra came into its own during his stewardship during the pandemic, offering a lifeline to members who'd lost their jobs or shifts because of lockdowns, cuts, or ill health. Chris was also a member of the board of the Broadcast Journalism Training Council, one of the largest journalism accreditation bodies in the UK. Let's hear more now about Chris's achievements.
From the initial contact I made back in 2019, at the end of 2019, I can say that the help Chris and his fellow trustees have given me has been absolutely incredible. I'm going to try not to get emotional, but he has helped me basically get my life back and help my children get their life back, you know, and that help wasn't just a one-off, you know, that help is continual as far as I'm concerned. You know, not all heroes wear capes, and Chris is definitely one of them.
I don't think anybody remembers a time before Chris being the NUJ Extra or even the charity chair, and he's really taken the charity forward and seen it through countless amounts of economic crises, setbacks, cost of living crisis, and even the COVID crisis, where he really immediately picked up on that it was going to cause a real problem for a lot of our members. And that he immediately kind of put into action plans to help support those members who probably wouldn't previously have thought about coming to any kind of charity, let alone NUJ Extra, for that kind of support.
Chris's contribution to the work of the Broadcast Journalism Training Council has been frankly phenomenal over so many years. Chris, I'm so pleased you've been honoured in this way by the NUJ. You represented the union on our board for so many years, and there's little doubt that there are many, many students who have now become professional journalists who've got to thank you for ensuring their courses have not only been absolutely the best that they could possibly study on, bringing them all the skills that they need, but also the standards have been kept so high for so long by you and others.
Let's hear now from our third and final Member of Honour, Chris Wheel.
The NUJ's official history says I'm one of 21 members who've been sacked for my union activism. I may be the only one who's been sacked twice within 2 years. Our response to COVID-19 and the help we offered to struggling freelancers was probably my proudest moment. Apart from being chief scrutineer at DM for many years, my main other role was in professional training, chairing Profcom when it was founded and giving 25 students a year work experience at DMs. More than a decade ago, I was asked to join the Broadcast Journalism Training Council to share my knowledge of online journalism, and I remained an NUJ rep there until April 2023. The NUJ has helped me several times over my 35 years. It's given me more than I could possibly give back, but I'm immensely proud to be made Member of Honour.
I'd like to personally thank all of you who took part in this video, and congratulations again to Chris Mullin, John Lister and Chris Wheel on joining our most distinguished roll call of Members of Honour.